Hi everybody, welcome to SID-THE-KID Wrestling, where today we're going to talk about the lost generation. The generation that was between the Golden Age and the Attitude. We're talking about next generation. Let's go. Everybody to SID-THE-KID Wrestling. I hope you like my page. We're getting things going, getting things rolling here. But today we're going to talk about the one generation, the one era of professional wrestling that nobody seems to acknowledge. And without this era of professional wrestling, we couldn't go to the Attitude Era, Ruthless Aggression, PG, and so forth and so forth. We need to acknowledge and reminisce about new generation era. Now, the question remains now, how did we get to the new generation era, and how did we move forward to the Attitude Era? It's pretty simple, really. If you look back to WrestleMania 7, okay, you had a bunch of mid-carders, like lower mid-carders to mid-carders, not quite in the main event yet. We're looking at people like Shawn Michaels with The Rockers, Marty Jannetty, went up against Barbarian and Haku, the last tag team the Rockers ever were in the WWE together. And then you got Bret Hart and Jim Neville and Neidhart against the Nasty Boys, tag team titles. That was huge. And we would go on to see Bret Hart win the WWE title in the new generation era. Now, if you also look at Jim Neidhart's been in there, the British Bulldog, yes. Jake Snake Roberts, Rick Martel, the blindfold match, of course. Ultimate Warrior was even part of New Generation era. But he wasn't really New Generation. He was helping to promote, to push forward all these new wrestlers coming into the WWE to make them to main event status. Like when he came back, he wrestled Triple H. Right now, Triple H, just the guy, right? And it was basically a squash match. It was to get him over first and then to move on after that. But we're not going to go into that just yet. Let's just dig deeper into what WrestleMania 7 was all about. We had Ultimate Warrior versus Randy Savage, career-ending match. Like Randy Savage proceeded for 2 more years in the WWE, and then 3 more years, and then he left. But he was again trying to help move people forward, and he did that with the Warrior. With the Warrior, we needed that extra push. Like he was in the main event side, but he needed the extra push, right? And then you had the Undertaker. His first ever WWE pay-per-view. Forget about PLEs. I don't consider it PLEs. This is OG stuff. This is the pay-per-views. Him versus Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Now, if Jimmy Superfly Snuka didn't put him over as much as he did, he wouldn't have gotten to where he is nowadays. The Undertaker. Let's just say, for instance, that Jimmy Superfly Snuka pinned the Undertaker at WrestleMania. What would that have come to look at? Like you couldn't put the streak for WrestleMania on it. You couldn't do that because like Superfly Snuka would have just said, "No, I beat them, done deal," right? But he didn't. He put the Undertaker over, a guy that was a heel, a gothic character that was a heel, turned babyface the year after WrestleMania 8 taking on Jake Snake Roberts. When Jake the Snake Roberts was a face back then, the roles switched. Great for Taker, awesome guy, but he was part of that new generation. You may say that the new generation was about gimmicks. It truly was about gimmicks. They're trying to put the right gimmick with the right guy, and it's just like say, hey, we got Bastion Booger, for instance, part of the new generation, great wrestler. But he had the gimmick of being a slob. So let's just put the gimmick on him. And it worked for him. Hence the new generation, right? I mean, if you couldn't, if that Bastion Booger wasn't there, you couldn't get people like, Bronson Reed. Big guy. You wouldn't get that. Even with Bam Bam Bigelow, came and gone a few times here and there. If he didn't come to WWE, you wouldn't get a guy like Bronson Reed. These guys laid the groundwork for that kind of weight class and that kind of division. Now you had also guys, let's take for instance Yokozuna, right? At that time, the only Samoan wrestler to have the WWE title twice. WrestleMania 9 was a big screw up. I don't even want to go and part of that later on maybe. But Yokozuna was the face of the new generation. All right, a young guy came up, WWE champion. I think he was a tag team champion with Owen Hart. I think it was 2 times. I'm not quite sure about that. But when you met Yokozuna in that ring, you know hell was going to break loose. He was going to squash you. That was big men. That's what Vince McMahon liked. Big men having that prestigious title, the WWF title. If you were a big guy, you were almost guaranteed to have that very title in the new generation. You probably ask yourself, well, okay, so you're probably asking me, well, where did the new generation start? In my opinion, it started, rest in peace, Andre the Giant. When he passed away before WrestleMania 9, that's when the mid-carders back then were starting to be upper mid-carders. And you're going to main event. Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, the 2 guys right there that Vince had trusted was those 2 guys. Bret Hart, WWE champion, Shawn Michaels Intercontinental champion, on his way to become WWE champion in the Attitude Era. Now, if you look at all these guys that were actually in there helping out, you had these gimmicks, like the Repo Man, who was a part of Demolition at one time. You had the Mountie, Jacques Rougeau, part of the Rougeau brothers, like the Big Boss Man, Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Hacksaw Jim Duggan, I would still consider to be part of the new generation. That's when he was really doing some good stuff. You had guys like Doink the Clown. You had Skinner. You had The Rocket, Owen Hart. All these gimmicks is what made the new generation what it is today. It's these gimmicks, all right? And now I know nowadays we don't have those kind of gimmicks, but back in the day, back in my time, we needed gimmicks to actually get involved in a certain program. Myself, I've always liked Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig. He wasn't part of the new generation. He was on his way out of the new generation, which was fine by me. I still, to this day, rest in peace, awesome guy. But the new generation, without them, you wouldn't have the Attitude Era. Because the guys from the new generation transferred over to the Attitude Era. And those guys in the Attitude Era, those were main event guys. Those were the guys you could count on. There was the Steve Austins. There was the Undertakers. Undertaker, I couldn't believe at the time that Undertaker was a heel, and people like myself cheered for him and made him into a face, a gothic character. And to this day, people, we still have that. We got the Wyatt Six family that should be like heels. They're not, because we're cheering for them because we like what they are. See, another company, NWA, WCW, they weren't part of that new generation. They didn't want to be part of the new generation because their roster was basically the old timers, the golden age of wrestling. Those guys were down there. We had the Hulk Hogan's down there, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair down there, fantastic. But they weren't moving forward, whereas Vince McMahon was. And what Vince McMahon did is brought 2 big guys to actually help out. Scott Hall, Kevin Nash. Big Daddy Cool Diesel, Razor Ramon. Brought those 2 guys in, gave them great gimmicks, and every time it worked because people were invested in that product. You get people like Jeff Jarrett who came and gone constantly. He's a wrestler, he's an entertainer, but the main entertainer, and it worked for him. But he didn't go on for the Attitude Era. The Attitude Era left without me. He was there at the beginning of it, but then that was it, right? So when you guys look at wrestling nowadays, and you always can say, hey, I want the Attitude Era back. Don't forget about the one era in professional wrestling that you should really acknowledge and look at. Since we have it on Netflix, go and look at the new generation. Go look at gimmicks like Jack Gonzalez. People shit on him, but look at what he did at WrestleMania 9 with Taker. That was an awesome match. I don't care what people say, that was an awesome match. Look at Tatanka. Look at IRS. Look at Ted DiBiase. Look at Nikolai Volkov. Look at Bam Bam Bigelow. Look at Doink the Clown. Look at like so many gimmicks that worked for the WWE, and there's those gimmicks that escalated those wrestlers into the Attitude Era. Some were left behind, some were not. So I just want to say to everybody out there, man, you know, I appreciate you guys saying, hey, he's the GOAT, this is the GOAT, this is the GOAT, this is awesome, this is awesome. No, you're overreacting on this stuff. If you want to know what a true GOAT of wrestling is, you look back at that new generation. Because if you survive the new generation, you were, without a shadow of a doubt, the GOAT of wrestling. Because that was a hard era to actually work in. Because if you didn't make your gimmick work, you were gone. And if your gimmick did work, then they give you another gimmick and another gimmicks over and over and over. Like look at Triple H. He came in as a snob, all right, and he made it work. Greenwich, Connecticut, made it work, right? Now look at him. You know, he became part of DX, a leader of DX, a badass guy, an authority figure, a general manager, and now look where he's at now. It was all owed to the new generation. If new generation did not exist, let's just say, for instance, people, that you had the golden age, strict way up to Attitude Era. Do you actually think that Triple H would have been there at that time? I don't think so. And there's no way he would have been there. There's no way you would have had a DX. The new generation laid the groundwork down for what we have here today. And you gotta actually acknowledge the fact that, yes, I love the new generation. Look at these silly gimmicks. But look at the guys who had those gimmicks. Look how far of a wrestling career that they had. Take it for instance, Duke Dumpster Droese. He came in, great guy, wrestling Triple H. Look at the Henry Godwin, wrestle Triple H. Look at the Warrior, Triple H, Warrior. Mark Merrow, Triple H. Like, these are the guys that elevated Triple H to where he is today. These guys helped him go to where he's at today. And if it wasn't for these guys, Triple H wouldn't be in the WWE, and we wouldn't have what we have here today. The new generation, people, is what you gotta look at in today's society. Before you even skip the golden age to the Attitude Era, look at the new generation. You'll figure out how this whole thing fits together from the old generation, golden age era, to the Attitude Era. You'll figure out, okay, this is how this worked. So without, like I said, the new generation, ruthless aggression would never exist, because new generation had hardcore matches. You know, if you want to look at the Samoan dynasty, new generation, no Yokozuna, no Roman Reigns. There it was, right? No Umaga. None of these Jey Uso, Jimmy Uso. You wouldn't have that without Yokozuna involved in new generation. I'm gonna ask you guys that if you're a true wrestling fan, as you say you are, and you love professional wrestling, you love the entertainment stuff, I'm going to ask you, we have Netflix Raw, we have Netflix SmackDown, we have Netflix for almost every single pay-per-view. I really would like for you to go back, watch WrestleMania 1, the whole way through. Watch the first Survivor Series, the first SummerSlam, the first Royal Rumble, the first Elimination Chamber match, the last time you see the Warrior in WWE, the last time you see Hulk Hogan in WWE, the time when Andre's last match was at SummerSlam, and then about 5-6 months later he passed away. Look at his last match with the Bushwhackers. That was great. I loved it. Go ahead and look at that before you actually say, I'm a wrestling fan. Before you start knocking people down and saying, oh, this was bad, I was bad. The new generation of professional wrestling wasn't the best. If it wasn't for new generation, you wouldn't be watching wrestling. Let that sink in. Till then, catch you later. Thanks. Bye.